Fraser's back, baby. That means we're back too. Here's my back also for anyone interested. We're gonna have for our premium members a full unclothed version, of course, but just of me, because that's really what the audience cares about, as well as also what we have to offer for Fraser Downs. Of course, Mikee P, you've been with me, and you've been here by yourself with other people to talk about the great racing at Fraser Downs, the great betting opportunities available at this singular track, quite literally, the way that they race at 7 p.m. Pacific time. They're in a real unique spot on the gambling calendar. And who better else to join in on the fun with us then today, Mike, than Miss Dawn Lupul. Can we call you Miss Fraser? Is that your title technically there? Because you really are kind of running a lot of things over there.
I feel like I would need to wear a sash and maybe a crown if we were going to do that. So probably not. I don't find it offensive. I do enjoy Fraser. So looking forward to it. Call me whatever you want. We're all friends here, right?
we may get the sash, and then we'll get a little convertible automobile for you to sit on the back of and do some waving of maybe. If this is a really good meet, maybe that's what we look forward to at the end of the meet. But Dawn, for those who may just be joining us for the first time, let's say they've awoken from some type of coma. First thing, we say, congratulations, welcome back. We're so happy to have you. But they're interested in figuring out what is Fraser Downs. So if you could tell us, or this coma person we're hypothetically using, how would you describe just the magic that is Fraser?
Well, Fraser's got a bit of a history, obviously. It's the only harness racing track now in British Columbia. So yes, we are in Canada, located just outside of Vancouver, pretty close to the American border, so just north of Washington State. And it is a 5/8 track. It was originally converted from a half-mile track. So we kind of have those half-mile turns with 5/8 stretch. So positioning in the races is extremely important. Post position does play a factor. Actually, what we have done too with in terms of post position, which our horsemen and our horse players both appreciate quite a bit, is we went from being a track that raced 8 wide and with a trailer, we've now shrunk that a little bit. So the horses will go 7 wide with a trailer. So the field's limited to 8, unless it's a stake race, in which case we revert back to the old 8 across the gate and 1 in behind. It allows the drivers to get into a better striking position. It's also a lot better for the handicappers, because before you'd pretty much just toss everything from the 8 hole. It was really difficult to do anything from over there. So that is something unique about us as well, I would say. And the weather, it can rain a little bit. It is Vancouver, so we do get a lot of, you call them off tracks, but the track is a limestone and it does take a ton of water. So don't let the rainy conditions that we sometimes have deter you from wagering. They're usually true to form either way.
Yeah, that rain is inescapable in the Pacific Northwest, as I think time has told us too. But speaking of time, Fraser usually runs in the evenings, of course, too, and that means that people might not think that late into the night that there are good pools to bet into, because everyone thinks everyone shuts down, goes to sleep, but the gambling really never stops. And from what we've seen over the last few years at Fraser, that's held true as too.
Definitely. And, Ray, you hit it on the head there, because we hit that niche audience, like Woodbine Mohawk is kind of just ending when we're getting ramped up, Meadowlands if they're racing as well. So you kind of ease into Fraser, 9:00 p.m. start time if you're in the Eastern side of things. And our American players have embraced the product. They really seem to like it. They're familiar with the drivers. We do get a couple of drivers ship in from Alberta to drive. This weekend is no different. Kelly Hort races a stable of his own horses here. But this weekend we also have Brandon Campbell returning. He's perennially the top driver in Western Canada. He took some time off, a few months, because he did have back surgery, but he's back in action. So we're excited to have him. And then, of course, Phil Giesbrecht as well. Lots to like. Some short fields to start out the opening weekend. It's difficult with the freeze, and then we have the thaw, and it's winter weather, but seeing what kind of cancellations we had on the Eastern Coast, I think our horse players can rebound from that in fine style.
Canadian horse players, American horse players, and for the American horse players, they don't care whether or not Canada is the 51st state. They care about good racing. Since we've been talking a lot to Dawn, let's just make sure, Mike, emotionally, you doing okay? Let's just check in with you before we get into the handicapping portion of this. You good?
Yeah, I'm great. The one thing that Dawn didn't mention, and you didn't cue her up for it, was the handle at Fraser has been exceptional, especially within the past year and a half to 2 years, and 15% takeout. So that is a massive attractive point, I think, with Fraser that we're not talking about. But for me as a horse player, I want big pulls, I want low takeout, and I want to be involved, in racing that is familiar. I mean, it's a lot of the same horses every year. We go to the program, and it's very familiar names in there, but that's good for me because you can, get a gauge for form. You can get a gauge for the connections. So I feel it's an attractive product.
We agree. We're not going to argue with you there, and you're right. What Mike said. Thanks for mentioning the 15% takeout, because that is something attractive. It's on all of the horizontals and the Win Place show, so that is definitely appreciated by our customers. And competitive and repetitive in exactly what Mike said, and that who you're dealing with. You get a feel for the trainers. We don't have ship-ins here. We're kind of on an island. I think, well, other than Alberta, the nearest harness racing track to here would, I guess, be Cal Expo. So not a lot of cross movement. So you do get to know the livestock and the players quite well.
I think Running Aces might be a bit closer than Sacramento, but it's pushing it. And on top of that, people don't bet on horses to talk about geography. They don't. The only geography they care about is it on dirt or turf? And for harness, that's a really easy answer because it's never turf. Let's focus specifically on a bit of a vignette for Fraser Racing. Of course, as we saw in the sizzle reel, Dawn, we can expect Thursday, Friday nights, correct, for Fraser Racing?
Yeah, we stick to Thursday, Friday nights. To me, as I got into more the executive side of the horse racing industry, it's so important to have that familiarity and the consistency. Like, if you can find a spot where your product fits, it really makes a difference. People want to be able to tune in on a regular basis. It fits their schedule, and that way they can follow that consistency. So yeah, Thursday, Friday nights, 7:00 local time. So again, starting at 10:00 Eastern. We don't deviate. We don't throw in an afternoon once in a while. We just don't. We go with what works.
And certainly there's an allure to watching those horses under the Vancouver floodlights, specifically when you're wondering if I should go to bed or not. But that aside, let's take a snippet of this weekend's this opening week's racing. Let's focus our attention onto the late pick 4. It starts for Friday, February 28th, specifically last day of February.
I know. No leap year this year. Crazy, right?
That's going to make me leap off something. But we got a pick 4 starting in race number 5, a condition claiming event, $7,500 purse. As you mentioned, Dawn, short fields to open this week of racing. But in part, it's because these horses have time off. Not all of them, might be revved up, ready to go right off the bat. But at the same time, all these horses coming in off of layoffs too, who are racing on this opening week, there's some room to potentially, hit some prices that might not be expected because we don't really know how tuned up a lot of these horses are.
Very fair. And one thing that's a little bit different, so we were scheduled to start the meet back on February the 13th. So our local governing body has an allowance for qualifying parameters, and it had to be extended to try to get everybody in. So basically, you'll notice if you're a handicapper, you know what you're doing. You'll look and you say, well, these horses haven't raced since December. Why don't they have qualifying lines? But our governing body did here in Alberta that does the regulations did extend that. So if you raced on the final weekend of racing in December, you were eligible to race the opening weekend without having a qualifying line. So that is another factor that you're going to have to consider as well. We don't have a lot of information. Some horses were able to qualify last week. We had to cancel one of the day of qualifiers because, again, track conditions with the frost coming out and everything. It's been a whole thing. We had an earthquake. I don't know if you know. We had an earthquake last week.
I didn't feel it.
Not the big one. They talk about the big one in California, especially we're supposed to actually get a big one at some point too. But other than that, everything is going to be business as usual. To me, I always focus on the guys who I know, the top trainers, because they're going to be ready. Gentlemen like Jim Marino, Dave Houdon, Rod Therese, Rick Lancaster. Those would be our usual top trainers. So I would suspect they have their stock ready to go.
Inside of this first leg specifically, with 6 horses too, one thing that's on your mind also as a gambler is you're wondering, how deep should I go? Should I take some chances on some of these horses that, again, we only have so much information to glean given it's been maybe a month or two since they've last stepped onto the track. So your eye in looking at this pick 4, how do you tackle this first leg?
The first leg, I will take 2 in there. I didn't deviate too far from what the morning line suggests will be the favorites. The 2 Sunset Rider and the 4 Buddyville. I think you're pretty well covered there. They are consistent enough. They both finish in the money. See how I did that? They both finish in the money often enough. Just really nice racehorses from good connections. So I will take both the 2 and the 4. The 2 Sunset Rider is my top pick.
Well, Mike, it's great that we have Dawn on for this opening week, and I know that either she's going to win or I'm going to win because I don't use either of them. So I wonder if you use my horse or if you're siding with Dawn here.
Well, I'm not sure what you're using. I will say
a lot of people wonder the same thing. Let's be honest.
If you remember the start of the fall meet last year, Rod Terrace opened with a vengeance, let's say. I mean, it seems like everything that he was throwing out to the racetrack was winning, especially those first couple weekends. So I don't think that you can leave his horse in this race, Buddyville, off the ticket. The horse has been racing, at upper levels, facing horses like Whiplash Smile. I mean, that horse would be favored versus these horses. I do think that horse is a must-use, especially from that barn. And then I think the 3 is a must-use also. Are You Crazy? That horse got very good in last year, especially during the fall meets. And, just was a 5 claimer at one point and ended up in these known as a 7 type classes. I like that race. On December 27th, really, he proved how sharp that he really was at that time. That was a fast race, 54-2 there on December the 27th. So he was a price in there. I think he'll be a medium type price in here because a lot of money is going to find Sunset Rider off that qualifier. Well, if you look back to that December 27th race, he was several lengths behind Are You Crazy. So we'll see if, he can close the gap, but I would be 3-4, I think, to start the pick 4.
See, I'm getting brazen, just given the short fields and stuff. I'm singling Are You Crazy specifically because of what you're mentioning. I think that this is the horse that's going to somewhat get lost in the fray of the betting because the speed of Sunset Rider along with the draw, I think, is going to lure a lot of people in. I think a lot of people are going to see, Buddyville was a stakes winner last season and then he's a consistent pusher. But that's my issue with specifically this setup. He's coming into this race off of no qualifier or anything like that, and he's going to be going uphill from the get-go unless Scott Knight's able to push him off the wings and then get him forward. He's going to have to come first up or find some type of trip in that way, while Are You Crazy, to me, might be able to land on the lead. And if Houdon can get this guy on the lead, given this post-draw, I think just for the price on offer, it's worth it to just be singled to him and then hope he can carry you all the way. Because Sunset Rider, to me, I think is going to be an underlay. The qualifier's okay. He might be able to take him pillar to post. But if Houdon can pocket him, I definitely think his charge has enough to hold off whoever's in the pocket, or even Buddyville if he has to come first up off of the layoff. So that's kind of how I see it. I'm going to try and spread in some of the other legs, including in leg 2, which, funny enough, is also the same number that I have. Claiming $8,000, $5,200 purse. Again, 6 horses going postward here. And Dawn, how do you tackle this one?
I'm giving the nod to Kelly Hort with the 3-horse Outlaw Duke Worthy. Again, this is one that does have a qualifier under his belt, so you get a little bit more recency in terms of knowing that he's been out there spinning. Had an impossible trip in his last start here last year. He got rimmed the whole way. before that, he was always there. You know, there were times he wasn't quite able to get past Keeps Getting Better on a couple of occasions, but he was always right there. I'm going to take him because I know I get a better price than Keeps Getting Better, but I won't leave that one off my ticket. I'm just taking the 3 on top of the 2, 3, and the pick 4.
This is definitely an interesting race too, Mike, because all of the speed is positioned inside by the looks of it. More Monet tends to do his best work when he's sent forward, Keeps Getting Better similarly, and now he gets a more inside draw because we've seen when he lands the center of the gate, sometimes Dave can't really get him all the way to the top. So are you seeing this as maybe a race where you want to lean towards the speed, or are you wanting to try and take someone who's going to be more kind of in the stalking fray like Dawn?
Well, I mean, I agree with her on those 2 horses. I do think that those 2 belong on the ticket. They both are classy enough. You know, they knock around this 8,000 level and win their share of races. If you look, the 2 won 10 races last year. The 3 only won 3 races, but had 10 shares. Just is always right there and has that qualifier to go into this spot. I'm going to try Bay Street Buddy, though. I think you get Brandon Campbell here, which is a huge driver switch for this one. Closing type, you mentioned a ton of speed in here. This horse does have a qualifier there on Valentine's Day and closed up in that spot. Kicked 29-1. Well, if you look, 29-1 in here, I certainly is going to pick a few of them up late. So I like the driver switch. I think that the race shapes for that one. So Bay Street Buddy for me, but I do understand using the 2 and the 3 on the ticket.
Yeah, for other harness handicappers, you might see 29-1 and scoff, but watch a horse come home in 29-1 when everyone else comes home in 30. That horse looks like a freight train coming down the track. And that's kind of what I'm thinking too in how I'm approaching this race. Just given how good of a grinder Bay Street Buddy is and how good he is at powering over horses, I definitely think that is going to be more of an asset in this race, considering Keeps Getting Better. When he gets forward, if he's on the lead, he's good. But even if he gets into the pocket, he's another one that sometimes he just can't muster enough strength to get by the pace setter. And with more Monet to his inside at 8-1 on the morning line, I feel like if I want to hinge on some speed for my ticket as well, I'd be better off using more Monet to make more Monet. I feel like Jacoby just has to send him forward, and he goes all the way because everyone else is too scared to push, or the more logical thing happens is which we see Brandon Campbell lean all the way back in the bike, and he's just dilly-dallying over the top of the field as we've seen him do 18,000 times at Fraser Downs. So that's kind of my approach. Either big long shot takes them gate to wire, or we watch Brandon pummel them in the second leg, or maybe even in the first leg, and he beats all of us out. Who knows? Like 3. Preferred Pace, $10,000 purse. This is the feature on the Friday night card. Lots of familiar faces with the best horses on the grounds here. An interesting betting setup, too, because we have It'll Be Fine, Sunshine Boy, 8-5, 9-5 on the morning line, respectively. Dawn, especially since this is a race where a lot of these horses are coming in fresh and such like that. Is this one where we might want to try and beat those favorites? Or as we've seen them dominate at this class all of last winter coming now into this season, do we give them the respect that they deserve?
Yeah, I think the way I'm going to play this ticket, I'm doing the Noah's Ark ticket, the 2x2x2x2. And I am not going to try to beat a lot of the more obvious horses, but I think I'll probably play it for a bigger dollar amount, like try to hit maybe a $5 or $6 or $10 ticket and see if I can get a good score that way. Because if it's paying, $30, if you got it for 10 or 20 times, you're still doing all right. The 6 horse, It'll Be Fine. They couldn't beat him last year. Doesn't mean that it'll be the same this year, but he was almost unbeatable for a while there. Sunshine Boy was really good at the early start of the meet, and then he kind of tailed off a little bit. So I don't know, maybe we get the fresh Sunshine Boy again, and I definitely think he could win. The 4 Rum and Raisins just seems better than the other ones, but to me, I'm just going to stick to the outside too on my ticket. I figure one of those, I can see one of them getting beat, not both.
For me, Mike, I was trying to figure out who would be more likely to blast out, because you look at It'll Be Fine's most recent race and how he got hung the rim pretty much until his legs gave out. And then Sunshine Boy's right to his inside, and that he has to go forward to do his best work. So are you looking at it where maybe one will have a better chance of getting into that place and you'll lean on them? Or do you think maybe those 2 speeds to the outside might open it to a horse like Rum and Raisins?
Well, I think the key to the race is the one, West Coast Beach, was able to win at this level last year. He does have a qualifier. He's got the rail. He certainly has plenty of speed. And given the fact that limited prep time for some of these horses, I do think he's quick enough to get to the front here. And he's the key to the race, really, because he could determine whether Sunshine Boy and It'll Be Fine are able to get over on this field. He could decide to park everybody from that inside post. And I do think he's very capable of doing that. And he showed last year that even though he won from off the pace, that he was capable of speed. So I'm interested to see what they do with that one from the rail. I think that one's a use for me. I know that he's the third choice morning line, but just the nature of this race, the fact that he's drawn this way, the fact that he has a qualifier, I want him in here because, I mean, it's a long season, right? And these preferred horses, they have to, sometimes get themselves into shape. So I do think while they are the best horses on the grounds, that maybe, and you see a lot of preferred races sometimes don't get quick paces depending on intent. So I'll use the one. I'm not going to not use anything from the Rod Terry's barn, especially this opening weekend. So I think the 3 Whiplash Smile is a use, despite that he's maybe not as classy as some of these. I do think just the way the barn's going, he's going to be a price. So I would want him on the ticket here. And then given the choice of the 2 favorites, Sunshine Boy would be the horse for me, only in the sense that, he got a driver switch on December 27th, and he was able to get the front there, and he was able to beat It'll Be Fine, who had proven he had won 4 out of the 5 preferreds prior to that, and It'll Be Fine really didn't race that well because he didn't have the right positioning. He's up against it post-wise here, and the fact that the horse was able to beat him up close last time with this pilot, I think that would be my angle again. So I'm going to try prices. I like the 1, I like the 3, and I would use Sunshine Boy. It'll Be Fine. He'll have to wait for another week for me.
And given the short field too, I think even though West Coast Beach is 3-1 in the morning line, if that one was able to win specifically, that's going to pump up your payoffs probably tremendously, just given how much these 2 on the outside are probably going to anchor so many other tickets. I'm of the thought that Sunshine Boy will try to go forward, and I think Kelly Howard will be just quite the gentleman to let him go by and sit the pocket trip, because maybe that's the better trip for West Coast Beach. I've seen that one perform better when he has a helmet to follow instead of facing the breeze. So that's a possibility. And I think Giesbrecht also would probably want to be aggressive because he knows his main competition is probably to his outside. So it gets tricky then where then it could set up for the speed to go even faster. It could even be that It'll Be Fine is better fresh. This is an interesting race. And I think I really like that this is at this point in the sequence, because with these horses, there are a lot of them I would love to watch warm up just to get an idea of where they're at, especially given how strong of chalks there are in this race. But since we don't have that, I think that adds some value too to maybe taking stands against them, because many others are just going to put their eggs into that. They're overpriced bird flu eggs into that basket instead of maybe trying a horse like Rum and Raisins, who I do throw on in the event that the speed gets too tumultuous and everyone decides they want to go to sleep. Because this guy's been knocking on the door the entire time he's been in the preferred ranks. And one of these days, it's probably going to be when he's a really crappy price. But in a race like this, in a multi-race, I think if he gets home similarly to West Coast Beach, if he beats the 2 chalks, I think that's going to pay better than whatever odds he is just vertically inside of that race. So I'm 4-5 in the 3rd leg. The 4th leg, which is also the number a correct horse has. Sometimes you see some freaky things, but that's for a different show. This is a $5,000 claiming event, $5,200 purse. This time 7 horses going forward. And an interesting setup with this race, Dawn. The morning line favorite is also the prime speed coming from a real informed barn at the end of last meet from Rebecca Canick, with Brandon Campbell getting on board. This seems kind of like a slam dunk, doesn't it?
Possibly. I won't leave that one off of my ticket. And you did mention Rebecca. She just started racing here last year. She's a young female trainer, does an excellent job. Her horses look sensational. They put them where they belong, and she did extremely well last year. She ended up being one of the higher percentage outfits on the ground, so I would anticipate nothing different this year. I am going to take a chance, though, with the 6-horse Major Winker as my top play in race number 8. Major Winker, there's just something about this horse. Again, another one that does have that advantage, potentially an advantage of a qualifying race this year. there were some really good races earlier on, and then to me, he just kind of tailed off a little bit towards the end of the year. I think he's a horse that races well fresh. I like the Phil Giesbrecht angle. I'm taking Major Winker on top, but yes, Airline Pilot, I would be very, very foolish to leave that one off of the ticket.
Yeah, for our thoroughbred viewers, first off, you made it through 24 minutes of harness content. Thank you so much for trying something new. Maybe you try a new vegetable or a new fruit tonight too, like a kumquat. Have you ever, has anyone here ever eaten a kumquat?
Yes, it's quite good actually.
Okay, well, I'm going to move that higher up on my bucket list, maybe above riding on a boat. But that aside, for our thoroughbred viewers, Mike, when you have inside speed drawing the rail, granted these are pylons inside of harness, a lot of times the driver or the jockey in the thoroughbred case, they're going to want to use it to assert themselves into the best position possible. And to me, I feel like that's probably what Airline Pilot's going to do. And in thoroughbreds, we see it play out to great success many times over. Do you think that that's a possibility inside of this race specifically? Or are you leaning more with Dawn where maybe, just maybe, someone else is going to sneak through?
I mean, I think she has the right two in here, to be perfectly honest. I do think that Major Winker has a big chance in this race. He's been racing for, that $8,000 level, has a qualifier going in for Top Connections. I do think that this horse likes to come from off the pace, but has shown speed in the past. If you look back to that November 15th line, was able to get, up close early. Now that was from an inside post. Well, these 5/8 mile tracks, the middle of the gate actually is better than the inside if you're looking to leave out there. So that's something to consider. But Airline Pilot looks the major speed in the race, and a couple horses next to him don't necessarily like to push off the gate either. So he's going to be 1-2 early. He looks tough in here. I think you don't want to really spend a lot of money trying to beat this horse necessarily, especially coming off the qualifier for the Sharp Barn. You get the top driver. I mean, there's just a lot of things to like. A lot of tickets are going to run through that horse, but I do think the 6 is a player off the class drop and the connections there. This horse has made almost 300,000. If you look compared to a lot of the others, they haven't. So he's classy, he's a closer, and he's dropping. So 1-6 for me also. I think she has it nailed.
Yeah, this is kind of a use by default for me. I played my hand in all of the setups to you two. I genuinely think that Campbell's just going to try and launch him forward from the pylon post, and I don't really know what other speed will challenge to the outside unless someone gets brazen or like a horse is warming up but maybe a bit hot that you wouldn't expect. But in a pick 4, I can't know that. I can't know that when I'm betting in race 5 because I won't see these horses until race 9. And then I'll see one of those horses and go, I'm screwed. I'm screwed. That's it. It's done. I shouldn't have bet this. But then I might win. He might go gate to wire and I'll go, thank God I bet this. Thank God I'm so smart and the best person in my entire life and entire circle. And I made, I don't know, $50, $100. If Airline Pilot gets home, it's possible. It's an interesting sequence because granted short fields aren't the best for multi races, but it gives you an opportunity to maybe, play with a higher magnitude, take some chances in some of the legs, maybe take a Stark single, try and hit it for $5 or $10. And that multiplies if you can nail it accordingly. There are a lot of favorites that might be able to get there, or they're so obvious that when they lose, you might be able to cash on them. But to wrap it up, Dawn, for your Friday night, February 28th, the last day of February, your late pick 4 ticket for the audience.
$16 play if you're playing for the skinny $1 option. I've got 2-4 with 2-3 with 5 and 6 with 1 and 6. Again, it's a multiple that I would probably amp up a little bit, make it a $60 or $70 complete play, play it for $20 or something. And well, not quite that much, but yeah, maybe I might. We'll see. We'll see how the night goes, but $10 for sure.
That'd be a good return too if it connects.
Yeah, it'd be all right.
Yeah. For you, Mike.
For me, I'd be $36, 3-4, with 2-3-6, with 1-3-5, with 1-6. So that's 36 for $1. And before you wrap it, Ray, I just wanted to ask Dawn about the possible contest jockey coming back. I was talking to Mike Novak today, and he mentioned that maybe Fraser going to be back on board for contest jockey.
Definitely. Yeah, we're super excited about it. It's one of those promotions or one of those things that kind of crept up on us, and we were, oh yeah, this looks interesting. So we were on board, fairly early on, and we're very excited to see how popular that product has become. So yeah, 100% on board with the contest jockey. I'm not sure that we're doing it every night, and I would be remiss to say so. I don't believe we are, but you will be able to play Fraser through that.
Yeah, definitely popular at the Raceway. I mean, I know they're getting, like 400 plus people in those contests weekly. So, and Century loves it. I mean, it's just a fun product and a fun game, and keeps people interested, I think, in the cards the whole way, because you almost have to be if you're going to do well in those contests.
And plus, if you wiped out your bankroll early in the day, it gives you an opportunity to at least get involved without having to, bet your money, as you pump up for the next time it comes around.
Very true.
Now, for the correct numbers that, like a true horse gambler, I have written on the back of some CVS coupons that I had sitting around. We can't afford the luxuries of life: paper, toilet paper, paper towel. We have to scrounge and scavenge for everything possible. But that's not what this is. The correct numbers for the pick 4 are 3 with 1 6. With 4 5, with 1. So for $1, that's 4. For 2, that's 8. For 4, that's 16. I don't have to do a math test for you guys. I graduated school eons ago. I know what I'm doing. Just like I know you guys know what you're doing. And you at home watching this video, hopefully you know what you're doing too. Not just today with the Fraser Downs pick 4, but also just with your life itself, because this is a complicated thing, life. And gambling on horses sometimes makes it a bit more fun. Makes it a bit lighter. When you win, at least. When you lose, it can be a little harder, but there's always the next time.
Still fun. That's right. Turn the page.
Exactly. You develop a skin of steel, just like Iron Man, when you bet horses. So, that said, Dawn Lupul, thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate it.
This Harness Players podcast, live from not the 51st state. Never will be the 51st state. As long as I'm around, I will keep him in check, personally.
Good luck with that.
Well, when his check clears, it'll be a lot easier. But that aside, this is the Harness Players Podcast. Best of luck to you on however you bet these darn things that go around in circles. And hopefully, when you bet, you win.